Yes. Julie Chetney,
Here.
Jay Dixit. I see you, Jay. Karen Sarsa Diaz, I.
Here.
Bill Stewart,
Here.
Krish Lancer,
Here.
Trish Gonzalez,
Here.
Richard Centeno,
I'm here.
Joseph Wong,
Here.
Tina Wright,
Here.
Bruce Cruikshank,
Here.
Philip Lloyd,
Here.
Sam Yee. Sam here. And Paula Rodarte is not here. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Okay.
I'm here, Joey Malonzo.
Thank
I'm
you.
using my phone, that's why.
Okay, thank you. It's good to see you.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. We're going to everyone has tonight's agenda, and you'll notice that it looks a little different. We've been working on a draft of a new, more succinct agenda for the board and all of its committees. And actually, what I'm looking at here, perhaps we need to add that not only will we review the agenda, but that we will review the minutes and make a motion to approve the minutes from our June meeting. I have to get my months straight still. So can I get a motion to approve the minutes for the June 2024 meeting as written?
So moved.
Thank you, Bill. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Trish. All members in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, thank you so much. Motion carries. Do we have any public input tonight?
Yes, we have Mr. Carl Argila.
Okay, great, thank you so much. Carl, please go ahead.
Great, thank you. Eric, am I audible again this evening?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's great. I noticed before I get started that Judith Enright has once again joined our board meeting. So I am posting in chat a link for our article, Who is Judith Enright and Why Should You Care? Everyone in this meeting should be deeply concerned about the impact which Judith Enright has had on our community. So please read that article. Once again, board, my name is Carl Argila. I am the father of Cavan Argila, an intellectually disabled deaf client of the San Gabriel Pomona Regional Center. Tonight's board meeting, including my comments, are being recorded under the provisions of the Bagley-Keene Act and would be posted for public review on my blog at www.sgprc.net. First of all, I do want to again acknowledge and thank Jessie Romero for her assistance with my son Gerardo's self-determination program. My son Gerardo is now entering his 5th year on the self-determination program. And Ms. Romero has been invaluable in assisting us. And it's always good to maintain an amiable and professional relationship with persons at the San Gabriel Pomona Regional Center. However, I ask that the board take note of the difficulty and complexity encountered by many parents attempting to transition to the self-determination program. The self-determination program should be easier to access and manage so that parents and clients can focus on services and not administrative work. The SDP should be like IHSS services. We've had IHSS services for as long as we've had regional center services, over 25 years. IHSS services, well, they just work. So I have come to the conclusion that the self-determination program should be moved from DDS and their regional centers to the counties. The counties have successfully managed IHSS services for decades, and I believe would do the same for the self-determination program. However, my main comment this evening, board, as you can imagine, is I'm requesting again that you terminate your conservatorship of my son, Cavan Argila. Your agency has filed petitions, and we're now going to court for the second time. We will have our second trial in 7 years because you insist that you will be my son Cavan's conservator. So any parent hearing my voice tonight should take note of this. No matter how consumer friendly the San Gabriel Pomona Regional Center may appear to be, ultimately they have the power to become your child's conservator and ruin your life. So finally, once again, board, I ask that the official minutes of this board meeting accurately state that I am requesting that the San Gabriel Pomona Regional Center terminate their conservatorship of my son, Cavan Argila. So that concludes my comments for tonight. Thank you again, board, for giving me the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you very much for that. Do we have anyone else for public input tonight?
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so as you can see on our new agenda, and you're gonna have to bear with us because I think we're gonna have to add one more thing to this. Under the that section number 3, the consent agenda, we have to add the financial report. So the financial report tonight will be presented as per usual by Dara Meixel. And as a reminder, it has been approved at the Executive Finance Committee earlier this month. After that presentation, we're going to go on to the review of contracts. We have 3 of them tonight. And we will have only one motion and second to approve all of the presented contracts. There will be an opportunity for all board members to ask questions about each particular contract, but please remember that these contracts were already reviewed, discussed, and then approved by the Executive Finance Committee to move forward to be presented to everyone here tonight. So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Dara for our financial report.
Good evening, Dara.
Oh, yes, sorry, go ahead. I think I just made a big error. My bad.
That's okay.
My bad. At trainings, I just remembered because it is the first meeting of the fiscal year in July. We don't actually review the financial report at this meeting. So I am so sorry to have called on you, Dara, and put you on the spot.
No worries.
But we do need to take a look at those contracts tonight. Thank you to Regional Center for keeping me on my toes.
So for the contract, it's gonna be Tim Travis.
Okay, so President Chudney, how would you like me to go about? Do you want me to do the brief overview?
Yeah, a brief overview, just
okay.
like per usual. We'll ask any
Okay.
questions and then we'll move on to talk about the second, and then yeah.
Okay, so the first service agreement in this evening's agenda is with Excel Transportation for transportation services. Excel Transportation has been providing transportation to individuals served in San Gabriel Pomona Regional Centers area since 2013. Excel provides services primarily around Claremont, Laverne, and Pomona, as well as also over in Inlands area and the city of Montclair. Some of our individuals attend day services in that area. Participants primarily attend the program for LC Vocational and Lifetime Community programs. They provide services to 30 individuals. They currently have 9 vehicles, 3 of which are able to transport individuals that utilize wheelchairs. They also work with another regional center, Inland Regional Center. So unless there are any other questions, I'd like to ask the board for their discussion. Are we doing discussion here or? Okay.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you very much for that one. Any questions for Tim with regards to the contract for Excel Transportation? Okay, not hearing or seeing any. Let's go on to the next one, please.
Okay, so the second service agreement is with Ideal Transportation, also for transportation services. Ideal Transit has been transportation provider for individuals served by San Gabriel Pomona Regional Center since 1998. They provide services throughout our service area, so all the way from Pasadena, across the foothills, along our eastern borders and southern borders, as well as also those programs inside. They do provide services to 265 individuals. They have 20 vehicles. 16 of those vehicles do have the accessibility to support individuals using wheelchairs. They currently work with both San Gabe and Harbor Regional Center, although they have a different depot in Harbor Regional Center's area. So unless there are any questions, I'd like to ask the board for any discussion in regards to this service agreement.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Any questions or discussion with regard to Ideal Transit? Very important. What would we do in Southern California without transportation, right?
And they were very pivotal during the pandemic. They, pivoted to providing other services, delivering items, assisting individuals getting to and from medical appointments. So they have been a longstanding partner with us through some very tough times.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, let's go on to the third and final.
Yeah, so thank you. The last service agreement is with ResCare for San Angelo, which is an enhanced behavioral support home. ResCare California has been providing residential and day program services to individuals in San Gabriel Pomona Regional Center's area for many years, longer than I've been here with the regional center, which is about 26. ResCare California, their parent corporation, provides services to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, both nationwide as well as also internationally. The Enhanced Behavioral Service Home, which is the subject of this service agreement, those are licensed by Community Care Licensing and certified by the Department of Developmental Services to provide those 24-hour non-medical care to individuals who require those enhanced behavioral supports, the staffing that goes along with that, supervision in a home-like setting. In addition to the enhanced monitoring by San Gabriel Pomona Regional Center, these homes are also closely monitored by the Department of Developmental Services. Individuals referred to these homes will have those severe behavioral challenges. They may also have health-related conditions that require healthcare plans. Individuals typically referred to these homes will be individuals that are coming out of those institutionalized settings. And they could come from other regional centers in addition to the San Gabriel Pomona Regional Center. This particular home was developed with community placement plan funds from fiscal year 2019-2020. And the home opened in 2021 and currently serves 3 individuals. So unless there are any questions, I'd like to ask the board for their consideration for discussion on the service agreement.
Thanks, Tim. Okay. Any questions with regards to this enhanced behavioral support home?
Yeah, I know.
Tongue twister.
I know.
Right. Not hearing or seeing any. I'm going to ask if there is a motion to approve all 3 contracts as presented.
I'll make the motion to approve all 3 contracts as presented.
Thank you, Bill. Do I have a second?
I will second that, Julie.
Thank you, Philip. I appreciate that. All right. All in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. I had to find you in my little romper room here. All right. Thank you. Thank you, board members, very, very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, we are going to go on to my report, and we have a couple of items here before we get to move along to our board training this evening. So with the beginning of a new fiscal year, we have a series of board members that we have to discuss, community members. The first person to discuss is the fact that we are recommending Preeti Subramaniam to return to the board for this fiscal year. She has been off the fiscal year 23-24. As per the bylaws, she had done her 2 3-year terms. And so we are recommending the Strategic Development Committee that she come back to the board. She has been very valuable asset in discussion and with her ideas, her input. Quite frankly, her laugh is amazing and contagious. So we are asking that for a motion and a second, and then a vote to add Preeti back to this board.
Move the board, we add Preeti back to the board.
Thank you, Bruce. Do we have a second on that?
I'll
Thank-
second.
Oh, I saw Jay's hand first. Thanks, EJ. Any questions or comments on that one? Okay, all in favor of Preeti coming back to the board, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? I get to text her tonight. That's wonderful. Thank you very much, everybody. The second item on my particular report tonight also has to do with Preeti. And so first order of business was hopefully that all of you would agree that she would be an asset to come back to the board. We are also asking for a resolution that she be added as the co-chair for the committee of the individuals served and their families. Preeti has been in this role previously, very effective. And this committee is the only one that does have co-chairs. Currently, Philip is our co-chair, and we have a vacancy right now. So we're asking the board to adopt a resolution to allow 2 individuals served to co-chair this committee. And just per the bylaws, we need a resolution for this particular fiscal year to allow both individuals who are co-chairs to be individuals served. So I am going to ask this board now for a motion to a resolution for, should we name Preeti individually to be added as the co-chair for the individuals served and their families?
That works.
That works? Got it. Okay. Do I have a motion?
I will make that motion, Julie.
Thank you, Trish. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Oh, very good and very quick. Thank you, Karen. Any questions or discussion on this? I think this is incredibly exciting to me. Okay. All in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Yay, I get to give her the good news. Thank you very much, everybody. She is going to be absolutely wonderful. Okay, moving right along. Now, with regard to the new fiscal year, we also, per the bylaws, have attendance parameters, rules, and we have a series of individuals who have absences And those accumulated absences per the bylaws codes that you see on the agenda these are pending resignations. So the 6 individuals that you see listed and their absences and from their particular committees. So the first individual is Henrik Wong with 7 absences from the Community Relations Legislative Advisory Committee. Paula Rodarte, 9 absences from the Community Relations Legislative Advisory Committee. Herminio Escalante, 8 absences from the Advisory Committee for Individuals Served and Their Families. Mary Soldato, 5 absences from the Advisory Committee for Individuals Served and Their Families. Flor Tully, 7 absences from the Advisory Committee for Individuals Served and Their Families. And Jessica Porter, 8 absences from the Advisory Committee for Individuals Served and Their Families, not including the 3 months that she was actually on a leave of absence. So these individuals have already been informed per the bylaws of their pending resignations. Erica, can you please remind me whether we need to do anything additionally as a board?
So the board can, but doesn't have to. This is not a motion. This is not something that needs to be approved or not. But if the board wanted to adapt the resolution to keep any of these members, you can do that.
Bill?
Yeah, thank you, Julie. I would ask the board to make a resolution to keep Mary Soldato on the committee for individuals served and their families. Mary was very vigilant in communicating up front if she, for particular reasons, had to miss a meeting. So I think she's very committed, and it would be a shame to see her and lose her input on that committee. So I would ask the board to allow Mary to remain on the individuals served and their families committee.
Thank you for that. And I do believe, Erica, that every time that she has not been in attendance, she has informed you prior for the reason that she would be absent.
Yes, she has. And if it's not her, then she has her aide call me and let me know.
And she has expressed interest in remaining on this committee.
Yes, she has. She actually called me right before the meeting to remind me.
Good.
That sounds like Mary. So can we consider Bill's statement as the motion?
Yes, you just need a second.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second for that?
I second.
You know what? I saw Tina's hand. Tina's hand went up really early. I got Tina on that one. Thank you very much. Any discussions or questions with regards to this motion?
Mary's great. She's been around forever. I mean, she is a staunch member of board governance. So I would hate to see her not continue.
Agreed. All right, thank you. Okay, all in favor of the resolution, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very much, board. And I'm sure that Mary thanks you too. Erica, would you like to be the bearer of good news?
She's gonna call me tomorrow at 9 in the morning.
Of course she will. Thank you very much, board. One more thing before we go into our training tonight, and I'm going to ask Trish from our Strategic Development Committee to take the floor. Virtual floor.
Thank you, President Chutney. So this evening, as Julie mentioned about inviting Preeti back to our board, I, as the secretary, am also providing 30-day notice that the Strategic Development Committee would like to nominate Preeti, now I'm going to mess up the last name, Subramaniam. Am I close?
You got it.
For a second vice president. The election will take place at the August 28th meeting. If someone wishes to nominate someone else, they must submit a written nomination signed by at least one director listing the names of a total of 5 directors who support the nomination, and that is submitted to the board's liaison, Erica, at least 10 days before the next board meeting. So with that, I will close it and turn it over back to Julie.
Thank you, Trish. Just as a reminder, the Strategic Development Committee does double as the nominating committee. So that is also the committee. So that's the committee that interviews potential candidates for committee membership, board membership, and then nominations for officers and all that kind of thing. So thank you very much, Trish. And that wasn't so bad. We got through everything in about a half an hour.
One question, one
Sure.
quick question.
Go ahead.
Okay, the other 5 people who have attendance problems, are they considered to be resigned?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes, and there has been some acknowledgement, I believe, Erica, on behalf of some of them, that they are aware and accepting of, you know, the bylaws, basically. So. All right, thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, so July is the first of our trainings for the fiscal year. Oh, yes, but just before I go on, there is no ED report tonight either, executive director report tonight either, just because it is a training. So it's not that we're, you know, cutting Jesse out tonight or anything like that. But we do want to get into our board trainings. If I would assume if there are any questions towards the end of the meeting with other board and community announcements, we could pop in a question or two at that time. All right. I would like to hand the floor over to Judith Enright from Enright and Ogletree, who is going to do yet another, thank you very much, wonderful presentation on understanding board governance, the roles and the responsibilities that we have to this amazing organization. Oh, Judith, I think you're muted. There we go.
I'm sharing my screen and want to make sure that the PowerPoint presentation is what's visible. Is it visible?
It is, yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. Thank you. So a couple things up front. I'm asking that anybody who has a question as we go along, please ask it, because this can be mind-numbing. So let's spice it up a little bit if we can. It's all important, but there's just an awful lot of facts and talking head kind of thing going on. The other thing is, I've known Mr. Argila for a long time, and we agree to disagree. So that's my response. So to begin the discussion of board duties and responsibilities, let's first talk about board structure. You have 9 to 15 board members. You have 3-year terms, except for the vendor advisory committee, who only has a 1-year term. And you can only serve 7 of any 8-year period, 7 years in any 8-year period. The board should have representation that's with legal knowledge, management or board governance knowledge, finance, developmental disabilities program expertise. And if you don't, you need to report to DDS how you plan to fix that. Board structure is comprised of 5 committees: the Executive Finance Committee, Strategic Development Advisory Committee, Advisory Committee for individuals served and their families, Community Relations Legislative Advisory Committee, and the Vendor Advisory Committee. So who are you accountable to as a board member? To each other, to the person served, to the Department of Developmental Services, and to the California Attorney General, which monitors and keeps track of California nonprofit corporations to make sure that they're doing what they need to do. So your role includes knowing your mission and vision statement and carrying out the purposes of the corporation, adopting rules and regulations to run the corporation, hiring a capable executive director, recruiting capable board members, appointing appropriate officers, and annually reviewing the executive director. And then you've got some performance obligations under the Lanterman Act, which include evaluating your performance as a corporation in providing linguistically and culturally appropriate services, monitoring services and programs, which is done in part by the Advisory Committee for Individuals Served and Their Families, provide legal and ethical oversight, like you did tonight in monitoring the contracts, and ensuring that the board is 25% person served, 50% related to person served or person served. The Executive Finance Committee monitors your finances. It works with the staff to maintain all the responsibility that you have for your finances. You also need to contract with an independent accounting firms for an audited financial statement every year. Monitor the annual allocation and review it to see if there's enough money there to provide the services. And if there isn't, then figure out what you need to do about that. And provide monthly reports on operations, purchase of service, an independent fiscal audit, except in July, you don't have a fiscal report. So DDS sometimes sets performance contracts that you have to abide by and report on how you're doing with them. Sometimes it sets corrective action plans that you have to respond to. You also need to annually report on disparity data about the purchase of service authorizations for age, race, ethnicity, language, disability, and residency. And if DDS gets it in its mind that it wants to meet with the board, it can absolutely require the board to meet without staff present. And the statute says they'll try to make it a convenient time, but they don't have to. So DDS carries a big stick. You're responsible to comply with legal standards. As I said, know the purpose and mission statement. Read the bylaws and update them if changes are made in the law. And I know it's really hard to focus on those bylaws, but they really have a lot of information about how to run your board. One of the most important things is to know exactly how much time is required to be a board member. It's not an easy job. So you have to know what your responsibilities are and be willing to spend the necessary time. And ask questions if you don't understand something. That's always important. And I can make this a little bigger. Does that help, Bruce?
Yeah, that's good. I appreciate it.
So really, I can't emphasize enough the importance of asking questions. Comply with your duties to the corporation, and the corporation will protect you. So your fiduciary duties, that I'm not going to read what the corporation code says, but what it basically says, that you have to carry out your duties as a reasonable person would. You have to be loyal to the corporation. You have to be loyal to the needs of the regional center and have no self-dealing, which means don't contract with the regional center, and there are rules about that. But as a general matter, you can't have conflicts of interest, and you can't get any personal benefit. Then the business judgment rule has two sections. It protects you from liability, and it keeps a court from interfering with management decisions if you make them in good faith and with the belief that you're acting in the corporation's best interest. You also have a duty of care, which requires you to attend meetings, listen to staff, and ask questions, and act as if you really mean it. Act as if it's really important that you pay attention, because it is. And pay attention and participate with board assignments and committee assignments. Attend community functions, speak up, and again, ask questions. Participate in trainings and corporate activities. So the duty of loyalty means that you act in the best interest of the corporation without putting your own interests first. Avoid having a financial interest in anything involving the regional center. Avoid conflicts of interest. We'll talk about conflicts of interest later. Support board decisions once they're made. Now, what that means is that if the board makes a decision and you don't like it, you have two choices. Three. You can decide it doesn't really matter to you. You can get off the board, or if you don't get off the board, you can't go out and say bad things about the decision that was made. Your obligation as a board member is to support the regional center. And if you don't like what it's doing, you really need to either come in to make peace with it or get off the board. Advocate for the corporation's mission, and don't accept distributions or loans. You would never do that as a regional center board member, except if your bylaws provide that if you are sued individually on something resolving around the regional center can pay for your representation and pay for anything that goes against you. So that's the only circumstance in which you'd get a loan or a distribution. So we talked about the business judgment rule protecting you. It's basically use common sense, ask questions, and one of the biggest challenges you have is reviewing the material that you receive in your packet. And if you don't understand it, the regional center board will provide you with support so that you can understand it. Because you're operating a huge corporation here, you have great responsibility, and you really need to understand what's being presented to you. So if you do that, you are protected. Now, there are things that you can rely on in meeting your obligations. You can rely on what you're told by Dara or Jesse or other employees of the corporation if you believe them to be reliable and competent. Well, we know they are. So you can rely on what they tell you. You can rely on what attorneys tell you as long as what they're telling you is part of their knowledge. So if you asked me a question about taxes, you couldn't rely on what I said because I don't know tax law. Same with an accountant. You can rely on them as long as you believe them to be knowledgeable and they know what they're talking about. They're not talking about something that's outside their area. You can rely on other experts if you believe that their personal knowledge and competence supports what they tell you. And you can also rely on what board committees tell you if they have only directors, officers, and employees, or experts on the subject involved. So your reliance must be in good faith after asking enough questions to understand and without knowing something that would make your reliance unreasonable. So if somebody comes back from lunch and it's pretty obvious that they've had 2 martinis, they're not reliable at that point. That's not going to happen, but it's hopefully makes a point. Whatever you're told must be within the person's competence, and DDS or the legislature came out with a new rule a couple of years ago that you can't you can't have an attorney on your payroll because they'll support the regional center as opposed to, theoretically, they would support the regional center as opposed to what the law is. Now I'm not saying that's ever happened, but that was the theory. So here's another really important point. You delegate to the corporation, to the management, operation of the regional center and don't interfere with it. It's not your duty to second guess what your executive director or other officers or of the corporation do. If you don't like what they do, then you deal with them. You shouldn't be involved in individual case management unless it's your own case or your family member's case. And if you have questions about whatever's going on at the regional center, you should ask the executive director or the director responsible for the area that you're discussing. And please excuse me, I have 2 cats who are spoiled silly, and most of the time when I'm on Zoom, they torment me, and I'm doing everything I can to be less embarrassing. As an older lady with no children and cats. So here's another important idea. Represent the corporation only when you have the authority to do that. So if you're out in public and somebody asks you a question as a board member, you can't answer that appropriately unless the board has told you to answer and told you that you have the authority to discuss that. So be really clear about your role and responsibility so that you don't act beyond your authority. And here's another one that's one of my favorites. Don't ask for services or anything from the regional center just because you're a director. That's dirty pool. You don't, being a director doesn't authorize you to receive any other kind of special treatment. You still have to work through your service coordinator and the service coordinator's program manager and the system. So the legislature acknowledges the importance of what you do and is grateful for your service. And in response to that, they give you freedom from liability, which means you are not going to be personally responsible for anything that you do as a board member with these considerations in mind. One, you're acting in your official capacity, you're acting in good faith, you're acting in the best interests of the corporation, and you're using your best judgment as a policymaker. Now, the other restrictions, you have to act that whatever you did has to be within the scope of your duties. It has to be performed in good faith, meaning you act like a reasonable person and you really pay attention. You believed that whatever you did was in the best interest of the corporation. It wasn't something really bad that anybody would say was really bad. That's what reckless, wanton, intentional, or grossly negligent mean. And the damage that are caused are covered by a liability policy that the corporation maintains. The corporation's still going to be responsible if somebody's hurt or something happens, but you won't be. So the only time this doesn't protect you is if it's a self-dealing transaction, which we wouldn't have. If it's a conflict of interest situation, which we wouldn't have. If there were distributions or loans, which are not going to happen. And in actions brought by the Attorney General. You remember I said at the beginning, the Attorney General of California is one of the people who can intervene in what regional centers, nonprofit corporations do. So I can tell you that the regional center maintains directors and officers liability coverage with additional coverage for employment practices like wrongful termination, sexual harassment, discrimination, and wage and hour violations. So the regional center has good insurance, which is one of the requirements for you to be protected under the corporation's code. You've already displayed your knowledge of the need to approve contracts worth more than $250,000. That's something that the board has to do. It can't be the Executive Finance Committee. You're also going to be receiving training, I'm sure, on issues of linguistic and cultural competency and using bilingual, bicultural staff and trained interpreters. You're using all kinds of interpreters tonight and translators. One of the things that people sometimes, forget, or that is easy to forget, is that anything that you discuss in the board meeting is confidential. You shouldn't be discussing it outside of the board meeting unless it's public knowledge and you've been authorized to discuss it. You know, you can discuss it in your family, but you can't, anything that you say in the board meeting should be confidential. And for sure, anything that's said in executive session has to be confidential. You also need to avoid the appearance of a conflict of interest, and we'll cover that. You should treat all matters involving the corporation as private and confidential, and only discuss those matters with board members and regional center management. Once a matter becomes public, it can be discussed more openly, but you should still be cautious because anything you say in public can have consequences that you don't expect. Now, you can go into executive session to discuss real estate negotiations, employee issues, labor contract negotiations, pending litigation, and any matter dealing with a particular person served, unless the person served or their conservator or the parent or guardian of a minor requests that it be discussed publicly. So anything that's discussed about a person served is almost always going to be private and in executive session. When you learn information about a person served, you can't disclose that information to anyone outside of the regional center board or staff, regional center staff. There are exceptions, but in fact, there are a bunch of exceptions, but they're probably not pertinent to you. They may be pertinent to the regional center staff. And there can be penalties for disclosing confidential information. So just stick that in the back of your hat. Now, conflicts of interest. This is a huge discussion, and I'm just going to cover the highlights. But I expect you'll have a time when you go over the filling out your form, which has to be done every August. It also has to be done anytime there's a change in your employment or your marital status or anything that could put you in the position of having a conflict. Because it's not only you who might have the conflict, it's your spouse, your children, your grandchildren. It's broader than you might think. So you cannot be a board member and an employee of the Department of Developmental Services, or an employee of a state or local agency that provides services to a regional center client if you're employed as an administrative, policymaking, or in a regulatory capacity. You can't be a member of the state council or state council regional advisory committee. You can't be an employee or member of the governing board of any vendor, except the member designated by the vendor advisory committee, or a person served who's receiving employment services through a regional center provider can still be on the board and still receive employment services. You can't be an individual who has a financial interest in the regional center except as a client. And a board member also cannot have a conflict of interest with your nonprofit housing and associate organization or like the Davis Foundation. The same conflict of interest laws apply to them. So you can't be either the board member or the executive director or a family member of the board member or executive director cannot be any of the following for a vendor, except the vendor advisory committee member. You can't be a governing board member, the member of the vendor, a board committee member, a director, an officer, an owner, a partner, a shareholder, a trustee, an agent, an employee, a contractor, a consultant, or a person in management, or a person with decision or policy-making authority. So that's not only just vendors, but also any individual, business venture, state or local government entity from whom or from which the regional center purchases, obtains, or secures services or goods to conduct its operation. I'm not expecting you to understand all of this. I'm just hoping that this triggers questions in your mind. If you have, or your family member is any of these things for a vendor or anything, any entity from which the regional center gets services or goods, you need to talk to either Julie or Jesse about how to deal with it. You have to do your conflict of interest statement by August of every year. And within 30 days of any change in status that creates a conflict or a potential conflict, and get it to DDS within 10 days. So new board member candidates and executive director candidates also have to tell the board if there are any present or potential conflict of interest before being appointed, elected, or approved for hire. And then after being appointed, elected, or approved, new candidates have 30 days in which to file a conflict of interest reporting statement. And when there is a conflict of interest, when you find a conflict of interest, you have to either eliminate it or mitigate it and manage it through a conflict resolution plan, which gets submitted to the Department of Developmental Services. And for board members and the executive director, it has to be approved by the area board and the department. Or you can resign your position. So that was a very fast discussion of a whole lot of material. I certainly hope that there are questions.
Judy, could you give us an example of a conflict resolution plan?
Yes. A board member does work for a vendor, but it's a person served, and the work is not a decision-making kind of thing. And you come up with a recommendation from the executive director and the board, and a plan for how that person will not have anything to do with anything relating to that vendor. The individual will not vote on anything relating to that vendor or those kinds of vendors, and all kinds of protections built into it. And then it gets submitted to the area board and DDS. And if the area board doesn't approve it, DDS certainly will not. Did that answer, Bruce?
Yeah, that makes it clear. The board member is doing work for a vendor, providing a service or any sort of financial kind of remunerated work?
Usually not, but it can be. And the more financial remuneration, the less likely the waiver will be granted.
Mhm.
You know, it's got, the idea is not to let anybody think that the board is acting irresponsibly with state money. The board, the executive director, regional center employees are acting in the best interests of the regional center, and their loyalties are not divided with the regional center and some other entity.
Mhm.
So the legislature set up all these laws and rules about what you can and cannot do. And sometimes it looks like a clear conflict of interest, but it's not going to harm anybody. It's not, it just, it fits into the law, but there's no real conflict. In that circumstance, you might want to get a waiver. Now, I know there are some regional centers that have a policy of never requesting waivers. The person either eliminates the conflict or resigns. And you can do that. Or you can ask for a waiver. And it's a board decision as to whether you want to pursue the waiver in each individual case, because the board has to support it, and so does the executive director.
I see. So the board member might, with a waiver, maintain his financial relationship with a vendor, say.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's really a tough one, because if they're working for a vendor, then there's an appearance of a conflict of interest, and you don't even want an appearance. You don't want it to look like, walk like, quack like a conflict of interest. But there are waivers, and people continue on. You have to renew the waiver every year, and DDS and the area board have to approve it every year.
But the waivers are, it sounds like they'd be extremely hard to get.
Not extremely hard, but you don't want to ask for them if somebody's a service provider, they really shouldn't be on the board.
Mm-hmm.
If they're tangentially related to a service provider, if it's not a clear conflict, then DDS will sometimes say that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But, the regional center has to go to an attorney. Well, some regional centers do it themselves, but usually they go to an attorney and get assistance in doing this.
If I may add too, I think it's important just philosophically that just because there's a potential conflict of interest doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. The law sets itself up for review and assessment. I think it's important to talk about, because there might be some different thinking around that, and I understand and appreciate optics in those aspects. But I think it's important to also talk about the as board members. There's some board members that are just very well connected in the community with a lot of different roles, a lot of different areas, perhaps even ways that brought them to the board of just being well connected. And so just kind of philosophically, I think it's important that we look at the law from that lens and look at ways of what that looks like. Is it possible to mitigate in that regard? So I like to acknowledge kind of both ends, if I may say. I think it's important to talk about that, because sometimes people feel that if there is a potential conflict, it's just inherently a bad thing. And that's not necessarily true. It just depends on the type of conflict, the potential risk involved, how well that can be mitigated. So a lot of different factors, but I appreciate that the statutory framework is there that allows for a review and an assessment, and for ultimately the department and state council to weigh in to look at that plan, and is that a good plan, and can that protect ultimately the center, protect you? So just want to kind of throw that in there for a little bit, just to bring that conversation. And so sorry to jump in, Judy, but
no, I'm really glad you did. And I'm also glad you clarified state council and not the area board. I've been misspeaking.
So, some literature still says area board, so.
Yeah, but it's state council.
Judith, can I ask you a question? In your experience, have you ever seen a situation where an individual served who does work for a vendor has been able to get a waiver and still be able to be on a board? The reason I say that is because of that restriction, it significantly restricts the number of individuals served who could potentially be on the board. And it feels like, you know, a situation where that individual could abstain from any vote that has any implication. I'm just curious if you've ever seen that happen.
I have, absolutely.
I'm delighted to hear that.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, it's
great. Because honestly, we have, as soon as we hear somebody works for a vendor, we say, nope, hasn't been. So I'm actually encouraged by that. So that is something that I think we, Strategic Development Committee, can say there may be an opportunity here. So you've made my day, Judith. Thank you.
But it can't be, they can't be somebody who's making serious decisions or.
Completely understood. Completely understood. Yeah.
And they have to be cordoned off so that they can't affect anything that would, say, affect day programs.
Understood. Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, this has been wonderful. Zoom is interesting. Usually, when I'm present in the room, I can see whose eyes are glazing over, but you've been very attentive, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Judith. Really, really appreciate it. I know I've been through this quite a few times, but it's always good to have a refresher and to just, you know, we all know a lot, but sometimes there's the little nuances and the clarity. I think I agree with Bill that this is something that the Strategic Development Committee could definitely revisit to really talk over, because to quote Jesse, opportunities. So
I would run it by council before you go too far.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's just it's good to know options, you know.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. And conflict of interest. What are we doing for our conflict of interest here tonight? I know we talked a little bit about it. What are we actually doing for our forms this year?
Julie, I sent out an email to the entire board. Some have already responded, and two of our individuals were supported by one of our HR staff, so they've completed theirs. Did you not get yours, Julie?
I did, and I was traveling yesterday, and it got buried in my inbox. I see it now. Thank you.
Okay, so yes, you all should have the document already. You also have the policy, the entire policy that describes exactly what Judy was training us on today. And if you have any questions, please call me at any time, email me. I'll be happy to work with you on that.
Wonderful. Okay.
And I just want to add that Erica has the PowerPoint presentation, so if that's helpful for anybody.
And it's great, Judy, because your presentation basically summarizes what the policy is a long document, about 18 pages long. So your PowerPoint gives all the key points to it. Very well done.
I reviewed that policy before doing this. So.
Right.
Thank you. Wonderful. So board members, does anybody have any further questions for Judith tonight? Any logistical questions for Raquel about the forms or anything like that? We do you can reach out, as Raquel said, anytime to get those forms completed. Do we have a deadline? I mean, I'll get mine done tomorrow, I promise.
Yes. Yes, I asked for the 31st, please. So by next Wednesday, a week from today.
Okay, awesome. I will put that. But I promise you'll have it tomorrow. Wonderful. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah. I have a question. I supposed to receive the email from you about the conflict interest?
Adele, it's only for board members, not committee members.
So we don't need to do it?
No, not yet.
Okay.
You're good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question, because we do have in these meetings, we do have a mixture of our board members and our committee members. The conflict of interest statement is for board members. Thank you.
I will have mine to you tomorrow.
Thank you. It's a good thing to remember for for committee members who are looking to become board members. It's a good thing for committee members to consider what are conflicts if they want to become board members.
Yeah, definitely.
And Joey, I just put my phone number and my email on the chat.
Oh, wonderful.
If you'd like to contact me.
That's great. Thank you, Raquel. You know what? I'm going to add that to me. Okay. All right. Wonderful. How are we doing on? Gosh, I think we might even be under time tonight. This is fabulous. How did everybody, board members, how did we all feel about the new look of the agenda and the consent agenda for our contracts tonight?
Great.
Loved it. One thing, can we have the names back on there?
Yes, yes, that's what I was about.
You know what? That's a good point, actually. Yeah, I do like that actually also. So we'll do that.
Yeah. That was like trying to especially when we go into executive, I'm like trying to who's here, who's not here, who's here, and I take notes. So
see, this is why we talk. This is why we talk. And we need things to evolve. Yes. Does somebody call me? No.
No, I just said thank you, Miss Julie.
Oh gosh. Now you sound like one of my students. I tell them I respond to I'll respond to pretty much anything except hey you. So okay. All right. Do we have any other? We do not have an executive session tonight. Do we have any other board or community announcements tonight? Bill?
Can I just 30-second plug for the upcoming Richard Davis golf tournament? I had a chance to play last year with Trish, and I was just a shout out to the staff. It was just an exceptional. I've been in a lot of tournaments over my long life, and this is top of the list in terms of organization, effort, experience as a player. So it's such a wonderful cause. It is a great, great team effort by the staff. So just encourage you, if you can either play or just somehow be a part of it. It's a wonderful, wonderful event. And shout out to the staff. It's a lot of work for you guys, and it's greatly appreciated.
That's a great point. I had forgotten about that. And you know what? All of those documents are actually in the meeting folder. All the materials in there. And it is...
Thank you, Bill.
When is Monday, September 9th? There we go. Monday, September.
And Julie, I'm just going to add, if you're a newbie, trust me, you can play. I literally last year had taken maybe 3 lessons, and I played in the tournament. So yes, anybody can do it.
That's reassuring, actually. Thank you for that. Okay. All right. Anything else?
Julie, are you comfortable if I do the announcement from earlier we were discussing?
Yes. Do that.
Okay. Just want to make sure it is public out there. Just getting it out there. But what Julie and I wanted to bring to your attention, in case you haven't heard, is that the director of DDS, the Department of Developmental Services, Nancy Bargman, has officially did her public announcement for her retirement effective September 6th, is my understanding. Nancy has been significant to our service system, even going back to San Gabe with history. And so if you have gotten to see her work and her dedication to the system, it's been tremendous. So we can expect a lot of recognition over the next 2 months or time here towards Nancy. And we just on behalf of the center, I want to extend publicly here in front of the board of directors and committee members our collective gratitude and appreciation for Nancy Bargman, for the department she leads with dignity, with grace, genuine care. And that shows in a lot of different elements of just being around Nancy and her work. Julie and I had the opportunity to have a kind of a personal conversation with Nancy Bargman, and really got to see her values up close and personal at ARCA and just in different platforms. And so just wanted to let everybody know that the department will be under transition. There's no formal announcements or plans yet, so we can expect that to be forthcoming. But we're just very grateful for all of the work being done. And if I can quote Nancy, I think she would be okay with me saying that she is super proud of her team at the department and is not concerned or worried about losing any momentum with all the great projects and initiatives. So there's some really, really good infrastructure in place. So I want to acknowledge her commitment to the system and also wishing her the best for her retirement and all of the adventures that are awaiting. She much deserves. So just want to bring some attention to Nancy Bargman and her work. And I know some of you know her a lot more personally, working with her in different capacities. But just want to create some space tonight for this announcement that came out just a few hours ago. So thank you.
Yep, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I almost forgot about that. It came across late afternoon publicly, and San Gabe Pomona got a nice little shout out in the DDS announcement because she did spend some time here as the associate director. So that was very nice to see, and it'll be interesting to see how things start unfolding. There's a lot of change happening in the system right now. The momentum is really great, but I don't think we really have any doubt that it'll continue to go in a positive direction. So thanks so much, everybody. We will see you again next month, and try and stay cool, everybody. Okay. All right. Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.